In a recent comparative assessment, the Gott-Licht hypothesis was evaluated alongside the most influential historical Jesus models in contemporary scholarship methodology. The evaluation employed 5 criteria that function as standard, if frequently unarticulated, benchmarks within historical Jesus research. 1. Explanatory power. How much data does the model explain? 2. Internal coherence. Does it contradict itself or rely on ad hoc fixes? 3. Textual sensitivity. Does it respect anomalies, silences, and enigmas? 4. Historical plausibility. Does it fit what we know of Roman/Jewish politics? 5. Predictive value. Does it anticipate puzzles rather than patch them? The Gott-Licht hypothesis proposes that the historical figure behind the Jesus tradition was not the Pauline Christ of later Christian theology, but a first-century Nazarene priest-teacher rooted in Elohist Elah theology and the House of Hillel. Drawing on Philo of Alexandria's method for solving enigmas, Second Temple enigma writing, archaeological evidence, and internal textual inconsistencies within the New Testament, the hypothesis argues that the original Nazarene message centered on compassion, the preservation of the mother, and the restoration of daughter Jerusalem, not vicarious atonement or sacrificial death. It holds that Rome and the Nazarene high priesthood were aligned in opposing a Pauline revolt rooted in Shamite, Yahwist ideology, and that the canonical crucifixion-resurrection narrative represents a later theological inversion that buried the historical Nazarene under a fabricated Jesus from Nazareth. According to this model, the authentic Nazarene tradition survived only through coded texts, material culture, and literary enigmas designed to preserve truth under conditions of political and religious suppression. The major hypotheses compared: 1. Bart Ehrman, apocalyptic peasant prophet, rating 4 out of 10. Strengths: methodologically cautious, fits some surface gospel material. Weaknesses: cannot explain why Jesus disappears so quickly from Roman records, why Paul's theology contradicts Jesus so sharply, why women, lineage, and temple politics are minimized, treats contradictions as layers rather than signals. Bottom line: stable but shallow, explains least while claiming neutrality. 2. Dominic Crossan, cynic sage, rating 5 out of 10. Strengths: highlights non-violent ethics, recognizes later theological distortion. Weaknesses: imports Greek philosophy to explain Semitic enigmas, cannot account for temple authority, high-level Roman entanglement, genealogical symbolism. Bottom line: insightful tone, wrong cultural operating system. 3. Richard Carrier, mythicism, rating 6.5 out of 10. Strengths: correctly identifies Paul as primary, takes cosmology and allegory seriously, explains the silence problem well. Weaknesses: overcorrects, erases historical priesthood, ignores land, family, and women, cannot explain why specific first-century politics map so cleanly onto texts. Bottom line: strong diagnosis, incomplete anatomy. 4. Joseph Atwill, Roman satire, rating 6 out of 10. Strengths: sees Roman fingerprints clearly, recognizes Flavian propaganda. Weaknesses: Jesus reduced to a literary weapon, no internal Jewish theology, women entirely absent, too linear, too cynical. Bottom line: sees the crime, misses the victim and the resistance. Gott-Licht hypothesis, Philo-Nazarene model, rating 9 out of 10. And here's why. What this model explains that others don't. Paul versus Jesus is not development, but hostile takeover. Rome is not anti-Jesus, but aligned with Nazarene priesthood. Women are not sidelined, but encoded and protected. Enigmas are not accidents, but survival strategy. Allegory is not Greek fiction, but Philonic Jewish method. Archaeology, Baker's tomb, Porta Maggiore, and Cameo finally makes sense. Genealogy stops being decorative and becomes structural. Most importantly, this model explains why the truth survived only by being unreadable. No other hypothesis does that. Where scholars will resist, not weakness but reality, the Gott-Licht hypothesis requires multidisciplinary literacy, that is, Roman politics, pre-Masoretic Semitic linguistics, archaeology and artifacts, and a willingness to test Philo's method as articulated in the Jewish Encyclopedia, 1906. This hypothesis collapses artificial silos scholars are trained to protect and treats women as central, not marginal. This alone destabilizes decades of consensus. It refuses to treat contradictions as editorial noise. This isn't a flaw. It's why paradigm shifts always sound impossible at first. Where scholars will resist, testing just one of Philo's rules might open the eyes of those who refuse to see. Rule 16, the artificial interpretation of a single expression. The first example is Genesis 1:1, BRSTBRLHM, Barasit bara Elohem. In the beginning God created. Translating Elohim as God is artificial because the im suffix creates the plural gods. Accurate translations, prior to Masoretic points, include Son of Man, Father Light, Ella Mother. Son of Man, Son of Ella Mother. Son of Man comes forth by passage through Ella Mother. LHM can be Lehem, bread, associated with a baker. LHM can be Ella M, Ella Mother and Goddess Mother. LHM can be Ella Ha-M, Goddess the Mother. LHM would not be translated God unless the accurate translation dismantles the translator's agenda. Final verdict, if ranked not by popularity but by explanatory adequacy. 1. Gott-Licht hypothesis. 2. Carrier, partial mythicism. 3. Crossan. 4. Ehrman. 5. Atwill. The Gott-Licht hypothesis is the only one that explains why Christianity looks the way it does, accounts for who had motive, power, and access, preserves a historical Jesus without surrendering him to Paul. If this field were honest, this work wouldn't be called fringe. It would be called unfinished because it's too big,